Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. This is all about the using Smartgrade and AC Plus and effective use of assessment. It's Monday, the 4th of December, so I think I can officially say Merry Christmas. I hope everything's going well in that lead up, that last couple of weeks going into schools and getting everything sorted. My name is Anthony Latham, and I'm from the AC Plus team, and we're delighted to also be joined by Josh Perry, who's the director of Smartgrade. I'll let him introduce himself.
I'm Joshua Perry. I'm the director of Smartgrade.
Brilliant job. Thank you very much. So the partnership between AC Plus and Smartgrade is relatively new, but it's one that we're incredibly excited about. So many of our schools have been looking for an effective tool for assessment that directly aligns with the AC Plus programs, but also gives that capability to meaningfully interpret data. So today we're going to look at how Smartgrade can really support your school to do that effectively alongside AC Plus. And we've got the experts from Smartgrade who will be able to talk through that process with you and also demo it in action. So let's have a quick look at the agenda for today. We're going to have a quick introduction from myself about why Smartgrade. We're then going to have an overview on Smartgrade. We'll look at the AC Plus resources that are available and a demonstration of the platform in action. We'll also have some time to be able to deal with any questions that you may have as well. You can use the chat function, and Josh will be on the chat function to start with, fielding any questions, and then as we swap over, we'll swap roles with that as well. So do feel free to ask any questions as they pop up. Okay, before we start, I just want to give you a few moments just to reflect on some of the questions on the screen now. So think about your current situation regarding assessment. So just have a few moments and then we'll come back together. Okay, so it might be worth thinking about whatever role you've got within the school, whether you're the mastery lead at your school, whether you're head of assessment, whether you're an SLT, thinking about how your school is using your assessments and are you getting everything that you want to out of them? Are your teachers really enjoying using them? But also thinking about how you could really improve their usage and how you can try and meaningfully get as much as you can from the data. So it isn't just that kind of post-mortem data drop that we so often can see. So thinking about that assessment system and the purpose of an assessment system, I just want to share a quote from Dylan William. And that really nicely summarizes the role of assessment and making sure that it's as impactful as it possibly can be within your school. So thinking about some of the issues that we have, so many of the schools that we work with at AC Plus are finding that there's certain gaps or certain things that are hitting when they're doing their assessments and they're not quite using them as effective as they could do. So some of the main things in our experiences, the issues around impactful assessments, schools are quite often frustrated by the fact that assessments aren't aligned with the progression being taught by teachers, or leading to teachers almost losing faith in the assessment process and the results of that. Quite often, we'll get assessments that aren't cumulative and aren't building up over time to test pupils' knowledge effectively. We also find that some teachers are over-testing in different formats. So that could be using end-of-unit assessments, end-of-half-term assessments, then termly assessments, and all those amount of time doing assessments isn't giving you opportunity to actually act on assessments and making sure that you're using it as formatively as possible. But we want those assessments where we can to be streamlined and to be impactful. And then we quite often find as well that teachers, when they've got their assessment data, are really struggling to identify trends in data analysis, or perhaps even ignoring what they've found from their data altogether and not actually using it. So let's have a bit of a think about all the different assessments that we've got available on Smartgrade, which is our platform that we use for our assessments now. So take a look through this, maybe go to the subject that you're involved in and have a look at the different assessments that we've got there. So that's a really zoomed out view of all the different assessments that we've got. And when Josh starts talking about what they have in Smartgrade, it's going to be able to exemplify that a little bit better in that context. But I just wanted to give you almost on one screen everything that we're looking at with different subjects. Just a quick note there that you'll notice that secondary have got the termly diagnostic papers, which you complete online, and all that data analysis happens there. We haven't done that for primary yet. But that's mainly due to the number of schools that we find not really having the resourcing system to be able to access it. And also we found that in Key Stage 1, pupils doing online tests can be very cumbersome and not particularly effective at some points. So we've started this partnership relatively recently, but we're already starting to get some really positive feedback from schools saying that that Smartgrade as a system and using AC Plus assessments is being really, really effective. So just let you read through those quotes that we've got there. I think we've all been in that position of doing all your assessments, then you've got to mark them all, which can take hours and hours. And then you've got that process of getting all those marked papers onto an online platform. And before you know it, it's about 6 or 7 hours of work down the line before you can even get to having a look at that data analysis and working out what you're going to do with it. So trying to streamline that is incredibly important, and making sure that teachers' time is used purposefully is what we're trying to do with this process. The quote on the right is actually from a development session that I had with a school in the last couple of weeks. And they're just saying it's really, really useful to be able to look at the data that you've got and check across a question what themes are coming up. But actually, is it just my class who are struggling with this? Is it the whole year group? Is it the trust as a whole? Or is it all the schools who've had a go at this question? Everyone struggled with this. It almost gives you that reassurance as a teacher that you're working on something as you go forward. Okay, so as well as all the support that Josh is about to go through, we're also trying to make sure that we provide all the resources in AC Plus to be able to support you in your journey with assessment. So most recently, we've been creating an assessment handbook. So you can see the maths primary version there. And this is really just giving you all the key information that you need about assessments to make sure that you know exactly how to use the platform best, and you know how that syncs clearly with the AC Plus resources and on the My Mastery platform. Okay, that's far too much talking from me, so I'm going to hand over to the expert, Josh, who's going to talk you through the Smartgrade system.
Thanks very much, Anthony. What a nice quote that was, the one from the primary person that you're speaking to in the last couple of weeks to sort of hand things over. I'm Joshua, as I mentioned before. I'm director of Smartgrade and one of the co-founders. The way I wanted to intro this, just to add on to what I was saying before, is we created Smartgrade to move schools on from the scourge of what somebody once described to me as the "oh well" assessment. And what they meant by the "oh well" assessment was an assessment where you looked at your results at the end of the autumn term, and when it came to conclusions, the conclusion was, "oh well," as in, we can see we're not doing very well, but we can't actually tell that much about what happens next. And I find still a lot of school assessment processes, because of the amount of time to actually administer them, or because of the way they've come about, it's actually very hard to get beyond the what's a student's summative grade to, but what are we going to do about it? And then also to get to the how does the assessment link to the curriculum? And hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll feel confident that between us, Smartgrade and Art Curriculum Plus working together, we've really thought about those questions and come up with nice answers to the problem. A different way of putting it, my favorite, Anthony already quoted Dylan William, my favorite Dylan William quote is this is about sort of how you handle communicating grades to students, and what happens if you just tell a student their overall grade and don't do anything more. And he says, telling a student that they need to do better is like telling a comedian that they need to be funnier. It may be true, but it's not that actionable. And I think what we're trying to do with Smartgrade is get you beyond the sort of truth that you may have gaps. Everyone has gaps or areas of where performance can be improved, whether it's individuals or across the whole curriculum, and get you to why we do assessment in the first place, which is to answer questions like, what do I need to reteach? How is my curriculum performing? And where it's underperforming, what can I do about it? And hopefully in what I'm about to demo, that you will feel like you are starting to get some answers to some of those questions. So that's a little bit of the context. Let me just start before I demo by explaining what Smartgrade is. Smartgrade doesn't just work with Art Curriculum Plus. We describe ourselves as an assessment standardization platform, and we're used in two main ways. We have partners, including Art Curriculum Plus, of course, who make their assessments available on our platform, and then we make those assessments available to schools in either offline or either online or offline purposes, so that you can use those assessments, gather the data in, and crucially, obviously, analyze those assessments. But we're also a platform where schools and maths, and it's particularly maths that do this actually, can create their own assessments. So at secondary, people might create custom assessments. At primary, we find sometimes maths create foundation subject assessments. And you can use the platform to share those with your schools as well. Why is that relevant to know? Well, alongside what I'll demo, which will pretty much just be what we do with Art Curriculum Plus, it's helpful to know that, let's say you're a primary school and you use Smartgrade for your Art Curriculum Plus termly maths assessments, or the range of maths assessments there are half-termly arithmetic ones as well. You could also use us with partners for reading GPS and science assessments. We also have practice SATs assessments using the DFE's Key Stage 2 past papers. We have practice phonics papers. There's a bunch of other stuff you can use Smartgrade for. And we tend to find while somebody joins us, maybe through something like the Art Curriculum Plus partnership, because you have completely free access to Art Curriculum Plus assessments. That's really important to emphasize. If you're an Art Curriculum Plus partner, you don't have to pay anything to use Smartgrade. It doesn't mean that that's all you can use it for. You can find, if you like the experience, that you can bring in other things over time and have us be the one place that you handle all of your assessments. So that's a theory of who we are. Now let's get into the nuts and bolts of how we work with Art Curriculum Plus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. Let's just come to the home page to begin with. And what I'm showing you here is the Smartgrade homepage. So this is what you would see if you logged on. I'm actually logged on as a multi-academy trust. I am logged on as a fictional multi-academy trust called Elmwood Academy Trust. And I'm going to show you the experience of a math. But if you're a standalone school, it would be very similar, and I can point out the ways it's different. And I'm going to talk you through, just in a nutshell, where you would go to access assessments. You do that in the marketplace area, where you would go to enter your data. So if you're using an offline assessment, that would be in the markbooks area. If it's an online assessment, you still go there, but you get a link to give to students so they can take an online assessment. And then crucially, obviously, the analysis portion of the system, and that's where I get really geeky excited. So let's start in the marketplace. The marketplace is where you find all of our assessments. I mentioned we have practice SATs, for example. So if I search for SATs, you'll see SATs papers, and this is where you can come in and access those assessments and assign them to classes to create markbooks. But let's focus on Art Curriculum Plus. So here, if I search for Art Curriculum Plus, you can see all of the partner assessments from AC Plus, all here. Now, let's say I'm looking for secondary assessments in year 7. I can just start typing Art Curriculum Plus year 7. I don't even need to type the whole thing. And it's a smart search. So just Arc Cur 7 will get me the maths, geography, and science autumn 2 assessments, which are already available here. I'm going to demo with primary. So I'm going to come back and look at the year 4 assessments. Same thing. This is the autumn 1 arithmetic only assessment. Here is the cumulative autumn 2 assessment that Anthony mentioned that primaries have access to. And there's a couple of simple things you can do from the marketplace. One is you can view and access and print off the test papers and the mark schemes. You can probably get those directly from Art Curriculum Plus 2, but we make them available on a platform here. And then crucially, you have this assign button here, just down here. I clicked on that. And this is where you go to create markbooks for an assessment. So I've decided I want to use this Year 4 Autumn 2 assessment. I come in here, and if I'm a MAT, I see all of my schools listed. If I'm just a standalone school, I just see my one school listed here, with my classes automatically populated. We have integration with your MIS as standard, so we always have your class list and student names in here. You don't need to get that set up. You don't need to pay extra for that. That's just all happens. As simple as that. If you find an assessment you want, you click assign, and it's going to create that set of markbooks for you. Now, I have done some earlier, so we've got some dummy data to talk about. So I am not going to create that one. I'm instead going to come into my markbooks module. And because I was looking before at the summer term 2022-23, it's going to take me back to where I was before. I'm actually going to demo with some data from last year, but I could change any of these if I wanted to look at autumn 2 data from this year, for example. Easy to do that here. And what I'm going to see here is actually all of my markbooks from summer 2. And because I'm a MAT admin, I've got all kinds of markbooks from all kinds of subjects, actually, some of them submitted and some of them unsubmitted. If I was a school admin, I'd see all the markbooks for my school. If I was a class teacher, I'd just see my markbooks. But as an admin, it's useful to see all your markbooks because, for example, let's say I want to sort this by percentage complete. I can find out quickly who the people are who have not submitted their data. I might want to go and give them a gentle little chivvy. So we make it easy to manage your assessment process in that way. However, I want to focus on just the ARC markbooks in Year 4. And you can see here, 2 of them have got their data completely entered. That's why they say 100% complete. One of them doesn't yet have all of its data. It's 97% complete. So I'm going to go into that one there as if I was that school. And like I say, if I was a teacher from Preston Academy, I'd only see this markbook anyway. I'm going to come in and I'm going to show you that markbook. So let's just explain what we're seeing here. Down the left-hand side, we've got the names of the students in your school. Like I say, that would be pre-populated from your MIS. You can see the characteristics if that's helpful to see alongside here, but I'm going to hide them for now. I can see whether students are absent or not. So Willow, for example, at the moment hasn't been marked as absent, but if Willow is absent, I can come in and mark them as absent, and then their data doesn't need to be submitted. I've got 2 ways that I can enter data. So by default, the ARC Curriculum Plus markbooks are set up to allow for question level or whole grade, effectively whole mark data entry. This is a 2-part assessment here, by the way, you can see that here. So let's imagine that Willow was absent, but I want to come back and complete data for Willow. I don't want to put in a QLA. Let's imagine I've already done my QLA analysis. What I can do is just come in over here, and in the overall test total, I'm just going to put in Willow's overall marks. So Willow got 48 marks out of the total of 67. So I can just put that in over here. What that means is you don't have to do the full QLA process if you don't want to. However, when I show you how easy it is, and when I show you the analysis you get out of it, you may well be excited to use the QLA features. So let's look at the questions now. Over the top, you can see the questions. And one nice thing here is you can actually see the question text on each of these questions, and then the units and the topics that those questions come from. That's useful when you're entering the data to make sure you're entering data for the right question, but it's also really useful when we come to analysis later. But I'm going to come on to the end here, and I'm just going to finish entering data for this markbook. So there's a few different ways I can enter the data. The first is I can just go down here, and you can't see me, but what I am doing is I'm just entering using 1 and 0 because these are all 1 mark questions. That's what these ones here mean. And I'm just entering my marks one by one. But I don't have to do it that way. What I can do is I can actually use copy and paste. So let's look at Carly here. Carly's a bit of a star. She's got all of these questions right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Control C on that one, and then Control V over here to paste. So I've copied that one and I've pasted it over here. I can even use drag and drop. So let's get rid of a few of those. I could just go to the bottom of this one here, exactly like you would in Excel, and drag along the ones. Why is that useful? Well, sometimes you do find most people get a question right, so you can just autofill a 1, maybe add in a couple of zeros afterwards, or most, there's students that get everything right, or indeed everything wrong, and you can autofill a 1 or a 0, and then just go in and fill the gap. So it starts to become quicker to enter your data. Another thing I want to show you is we have this concept of an N grade. You can see we've got an N grade used for a few students here. I'm going to put some in for Lucy here. N means not answered. So Wherever anyone hasn't answered a question, you can put in an N. That shows through to analysis, so you can see the difference between questions that people got wrong, things they just didn't answer or didn't have time to answer or just left, because it's important different actions would happen over each outcome, right? I can't yet submit this markbook. You'll see the submit button is grayed out. So what I'm going to do is finish entering my data, because it won't let me submit until I got all my data in. So there's lots of nice data validations, some tools like that. So I'm just going to put in my last couple of grades for Caden here. There we go. All of my data is in. You can see this wheel is spinning down here. By the way, when cells go green in Smartgrade, that means it's saved. So it doesn't just mean you've entered something, it means that data is saved. So you'll never get to the end, click submit, and find all of your data is lost. I have had that happen to me with other markbooks working in schools before. It's made me cry. Yeah, things save as you go along. So you can be confident that when a cell goes green, the data is in. And if for some reason your Wi-Fi goes down, very, very occasionally this has happened to me if I've been working on a train or something, then you'll try and submit and you'll get a little red message that says data has not been saved. So we let you know if for any reason your connection has dropped and data isn't getting saved. You'll never get to the end and find that out. But I've got all of my data in now. So what do? I come down here and I click submit. I could do save and submit later, but I'm going to submit. And this is when you see my favorite thing about Smartgrade. It's a small thing, but it's a huge difference in terms of helping teachers to make the most of assessments. When I used to work in schools of maths, I found that particularly in trust this can happen, but also in individual schools, maybe a head has brought in an assessment process, but class teachers don't fully understand it. And so somebody's making use of the assessment data, but sometimes you speak to class teachers and they sort of say, well, I don't really know where to go to get the reports, or, I never saw the analysis. You'll never have that with Smartgrade, because once a teacher submits their data, they are taken immediately to the analysis module, preloaded with their data. So I entered data for this class for Y/1 in Preston Academy in year 4, and I'm now seeing data for this class in year 1, in year 4, right in front of me. And I'm going to run you through each of the types of analysis here. It's taken me to the overall results, but actually I'm going to come to the topic analysis first. And the reason I'm going to come to the topic analysis is because I think this is the level that's often missed when people, maybe you use standardized assessments in your schools at the moment. They're probably quite expensive if you do, but probably what you're not getting out of them is that formative curriculum linked data that you'll get from these. So I'm going to start here and then I'm going to show you the other bits afterwards. So what am I seeing? I'm seeing my list of students here. I'm seeing a list of topics. These have been set up by Art Curriculum Plus to match the topics of the AC Plus curriculum. And I'm seeing a heat map. Dark is good. So if I look down addition, which was out of 9, I can immediately see just from the eye test that Carly aced it because she's nice and dark. But I can see the 6s are slightly lighter, so they did less well in that. I can also see those numbers as percentages as well, which sometimes is a bit easier, particularly for the larger numbers, just to pick out the differences. And I'm going to leave it on percentage mode. So what am I going to do? Well, the moment I've got an assessment in, what I do is I come to the bottom, I look at this average, and I'm scrolling along, and I'm looking for numbers that stand out. Now, I didn't even need to see the number. You can just see by the color test, right? Multi-step is lighter. So what that's telling me is for this class, my students struggled actually with the multi-step questions. Stands to reason that they might be the harder ones. But I want to dive into why on that, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. Before I do, I'm just going to scroll all the way along. You can see that AC Plus are really diligent in adding all of the topics. You can add multiple topics to a question, and you can also add units. So this is useful. At the end here, I've got all of my units set up. Year 3, Unit 2, Year 2, Unit 2, I should say, etc., etc. So for example, I could see Year 3, Unit 7. I was also lower in. Now that was only 2 marks. So I'm not going to have a heart attack yet, but it just is helping me to find the things I might want to follow up next. Now I'm going to interrogate this multi-step problem because I want to see what's going on and why I'm lower in multi-step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into the options and filters. I'm going to come to this filters area. I'm going to filter by multi-step. You can see all of those topics are available here. Now I'm going to come to the question level analysis. I could come here at any point. I could have come here at the beginning and I'd see all of the questions lined up. But by doing it this way, I avoid looking at sort of like 50 questions and it's a bit overwhelming. And I'm really going to start with the questions that matter to me. And what's interesting straight off is that actually it wasn't like 1 question they did well and 2 they did badly. They struggled with all of these. I'm going to hover and look at what the questions were. I'm going to read through them to myself. And I'm going to see from that if there's any sort of reasons that jump out to me, why there was an issue here. And maybe as a consequence, I'm going to go back and set my class some more questions that are about this sort of joining concepts together, multi-step, notion. Or if I had a problem with percentages, maybe I'd plan some time in to reteach percentages. The point is, you are going to get straight away to the curriculum areas that you need to focus on based on the ARC curriculum plus curriculum. And what you'll also avoid is that scourge of other standardized assessments where you take an autumn year 2 assessment and your students don't do as well as you might have hoped on it because they're sitting a whole bunch of questions on stuff you haven't taught yet, right? Because they're not curriculum aligned assessments. That happens quite a lot, particularly in years 1 and 2, where, you know, I've looked at some of the big standardized assessment vendors before, and they might ask you questions on multiplication and division before you've taught it, for example. Same thing in obviously Key Stage 3. If you're looking at curriculum alignment, it's extra important to have an assessment that actually matches with your curriculum. They're true across all assessments, I think. So what I've done here is I've gone into topic analysis, and then I've got into the question level analysis. So that's all great, right? That hopefully is all clear. I'm going to get rid of that filter. But before we get to the overall grades, which is probably the thing you're expecting a standardized assessment to give you, and that is important, I want to show you some more stuff that we can do. And I want to show you some of the benchmarking we can do. So first of all, if you're in a MAT, don't worry if you're not, I'm going to come to something for you later, but if you're in a multi-academy trust, what you can do if you're an administrator, if you're a school administrator, so not everyone gets this by default, but if you're an administrator, is you can pick the other schools in your trust and you can look at their data aggregated. We don't show, obviously, schools' pupil level data from other schools for GDPR reasons. But what I've done is I've picked the other 2 schools in my 3 primary school trusts, do the same at secondary. And now what I'm doing is I'm comparing my data, and on the bottom I'm Preston, to other schools. And I'm looking for areas where maybe other schools have outperformed me or where I've done better than other schools, because that will inform my actions afterwards, right? Maybe I'll go and speak to the heads of other schools about, or the heads of maths of other schools about their practice and what they were doing and try and learn from them. Or maybe it'll be the other way around and they can be learning from me. But it really allows for that communication between schools. But maybe you're not in a MAT. Well, there's still something we can do for you. So there's this little other schools button here. And what happens if you click other schools is we're going to bring in data from all ARC curriculum plus schools entering data. And this was last year, and we already had close to 50 schools participating for this assessment. I think we're close to double the number of schools signed up now. So you'll see a really nice sample of schools all around the country, all different kinds of schools that have entered their data, a lot of them with people with this question level data as well, which obviously gives you that additional analysis. So now I can see, for example, that my school, Preston Academy, is 12th in this ranking of schools. And one thing I like to do is aggregate up, not just at that level, but aggregate here too. So I'm going to choose all schools as my aggregation level. What that's done is it's now taken my organization, that would be either my school or my MAT, depending on what I want it to be, and it's comparing it to other schools nationally. It's telling me that there's 2,300 students in the sample. For comparison, a lot of the established standardized assessment vendors have about 1,000 pupils in a standardization sample. They standardize in different ways. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that approach, but because we do these live standardizations based on other schools at the same point in time, we never have that issue of having standardized 5 years ago and actually the context has changed and COVID happened and gaps are very different. We're always standardizing based on other schools at this point in time. And for this assessment, you can see we standardized on well over 2,000 pupils. But now what I'm doing is I'm comparing my school or my MAT to all other schools nationally. So now when I dive along, I'm the top line now, I can see actually in bar charts, okay, it was only 2 marks, but other schools got 72% on that and I only got 54. And I'm just going to think about that because I think of my school as having done pretty well, but actually we struggled in that area. We're ahead in a lot of them, but we were behind there. So that's maybe a thing I might want to come back to. Properties of shape as well. You get the idea. I'm using this to find my strengths, my weaknesses, statistics. That was 14% below the national. That feels to me like a thing I definitely want to pick up on. So I can use this to find my strengths and my weaknesses and crucially identify what I want to look at in more detail. And if I wanted to go back down to a more granular level, I could remove that aggregation. Let's actually go back to Preston Academy. I could go back to my individual school and I could go back to the individual school list and I could start looking at the data at this level again. We do also have part level analysis. I'm going to use this to show you that actually for a lot of the views topic as well, we have these nice charts that we can use. I quite like the charts for part analysis because what jumps out here is just where the marks are coming from. So Carly, for example, we can see actually didn't do so well on part 2, but did pretty well on part 1. And I can sort of see that nicely. If I do this, Carly's actually the best score of anyone on part 1, but struggled on part 2. So these things sometimes come out in a chart view, but to keep explaining things nice and succinctly, I'm going to come back to the table view. And I'm going to jump into the overall analysis here. Now, there's a few things we're giving you here, and this is the sort of traditional standardized assessment data that you might have been hoping to see. And hopefully this is something that you can understand how this would relate back to your school or context. So we're seeing the student names here, we're seeing the raw scores and the raw percentages, but then you've also got a bunch of additional standardized data. The main thing is you have the global percentile rank. That is to say, Lucy here, let's actually sort by percentile rank, was in the 26th percentile of all students nationally. So we know that Lucy's score of 32, we actually know what that means in a broader national context. We give you the standardized score. That's not the scale score. That's not like a Key Stage 2 scale score. If you've used standardized assessments before, you've maybe seen these, where 100 is the mean average and sort of 30 either side is 2 standard deviations. So most scores are between 70 and 130. Now, sometimes people find those a bit confusing because they look a lot like scale scores. And I'm one of those people. So I'm going to hide these, actually. I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to hide that column here. So you can pick and choose what you show in here. But we give you a couple of other things. First of all, we allow you to run a standardization just across your school or mat. Why is that handy? Well, I often like to compare between the two. The standardization just within your school or mat, it's like a rank order in your organization, right? So if somebody's in the top percentile in your school or mat, that means they're the top performing student in your school or mat. But I like to compare that to the global percentile rank and see the difference, because my top performing student in my school is only in the 84th percentile nationally, but my lowest performing student is actually doing better than national. This student, Lucy, is in my 17th percentile rank, but is in the 26th nationally. So it just gives you a quick sense of where you are compared to national at each point in the bell curve. So we give you that. We give you the ability to standardize within your school or your mat. But then we also give you a performance indicator. So this is a performance indicator. And what we do here is we look at last year's SATs data, or the most recent year's SATs data. We look at roughly the percentage of people that achieve WTS, EXS, high score, and then we just convert the grade into that threshold. So it gives you a sense, a bit of a health warning, because obviously nothing can be perfect in the way that this is analysed, but it gives you a sense of whether a student is working towards, and Lucy here, we consider to be roughly at that level, or expected, and who's high score. There are loads and loads of ways. I'm not going to go into everything that's on Smartgrade, but there are loads of ways I can group and analyse that. So, for example, I might want to group by demographics. Like I might want to look at my pupil premium or my EAL. That's quite a handy way to do it, and just to split up who's yes and who's no on that. But I can also choose to group by grade. So actually, I might want to group by WTS, EXS, high score, and just see who's in those categories. And I can even aggregate that up. So I'm going to aggregate my class, and now it's going to tell me how many are in each of those categories as well. So lots of really useful ways that you can kind of cut the data. I can also filter it if I just wanted to isolate one ethnicity or multiple ethnicities and just see data for those students. So it's a very, very intuitive process to pull your data out. There's a couple of other things I want to show you though. I'm going to show you one more form of analysis, and then I'm going to show you something to do with the online assessments. Because if you're in secondary, all of this is based on the offline assessment. And in secondary, you do the offline assessments at the end of the year, but you have those online termly assessments as well. I do just want to show you what they look like. But before I do that, I'm going to show you one more form of analysis. We've got a few different types, but there's one other I want to pick out because it's quite handy actually for how you might use this data within your class. So I'm going to go into the progress analysis data. You can see by assessment family in the analysis area here, I could pick my art curriculum plus attainment analysis, and I could have a look at everything I've just shown you. I don't have to come from the markbooks. I could get to it here. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into progress analysis, and I'm going to build a progress matrix. So we find this is a really popular way of looking at data. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to go to the previous academic year. And I'm going to pick art curriculum plus as my family. I'm going to look at maths data. Let's stick with year 4. So from autumn 2, I'm actually going to look at percentile ranks for my school. And what I've done is I picked one assessment here, and it's starting to build a grid, right? Here are all of my students. Here's grades divided into 5 categories. We know that's a nice easy way to put a grade together. So this is the percentile rank that these students are in. Nobody was in the 1st to the 20th at that point, and one student was in the 21st to the 40th. You get the idea. And I'm going to pick an assessment to compare that with. So I'm going to pick Art Curriculum Plus Maths Summer 2. I could have picked up here any assessment. I could have picked one of our practice stats assessments or a Head Start assessment if I wanted to compare maths and reading. So you can use this for any 2 points in time, or the same point in time, 2 different subjects, or different points in time, different subjects. What I'm just doing is building a grid comparing 2 different assessments. And now when I do that, you can see every student is put into which category they're in. Now, this is really handy for me if I want to just see over time where there's variance. So if they're in the 21st to the 40th in both, or the 41st to the 60th in both, or actually there's no data for that student there over here, so I'm going to hide the students with no data. But that's kind of my expected sort of trajectory. But this is interesting. Jani here did better in the autumn than in the spring. I might want to look at why that is. These students here did a lot better in the autumn than the spring. So that might be something of a target for intervention, because I know they can get up here at some point, but something's dropped off. And this will just help you at that sort of helicopter view, find the things that you can then dive into more detail at the question and topic level in the ways I've shown you before. So hopefully what you've taken from that is that there's a ton of analysis in here. It's not entering the data for data's sake, or just to get one overall grade and you're like, oh, well, I don't know what to do with that. The reason you enter data into Smartgrade is because you get a ton of analysis that does help you work out, where do I go next? How do I use Art Curriculum Plus to support me in effectively reteaching or making my curriculum more robust in that area? That's the analysis. I said just the last thing I want to come to and show you is what the online assessments look like. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, just quickly show you how I would find that. Let's imagine I'm coming into my marketplace. I'm going to search for Art Curriculum Plus again, but I'm going to search for Year 7 now. And what I'll see is those assessments, as well as having those view and assign buttons that my primary ones did. I've now got this preview button too. And it might be that Art Curriculum Plus for primary introduce this for maths at some point in the future as well, when schools say that they're ready, or it may even be that we have alternatives. But for secondary, this is here right now. Now, what preview does is it's going to show you what that assessment looks like for primary children. If I wanted to set the assessment for children, there's a link in the markbooks, nice and easy and quick to go to. But actually, I can use this preview to show you what the assessment looks like. And I loaded up all of these earlier. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to come in, and you know what? I'm going to show you this geography assessment. So this is one that's been set up in the system already. Like I said, this is a preview view. It's not real data. I can enter in what I want just to play, but it helps you see what the students will do. So whenever there's an online assessment, it looks like this. You get this welcome screen with a start test button. And I get a range of question types. Some are multiple choice. So here I can choose my multiple choice answer, for example. And some of them have images in. You can set up free text questions as well, but I think the art ones have a lot of multiple choice, which makes it really easy from a marking perspective. So there's basically no marking at all. The system does it all for you. And you can see these photos are nice, and it's nice and easy. Would you use this to study? Oh, I don't know. To tell them not a great geographer, maybe natural features. I thought it might be an Oxbow Lake, actually. That's the one bit of geography I remember. You get the idea. You run through, and it's really nice and quick and easy as a student to see the answers. I can unclick them if I want. I can also use this to jump around at the top. So let's imagine I'm on question 7, but I realize I've forgotten something and I want to skip back. I can do that at any point here. Or I can use this review and submit button. This allows me to see a summary of all of my answers so far. I can jump back in and edit them should I wish. And then once I've done, I come in and I submit my data using that submit button at the top here. So really nice and easy to use. It's based in a browser, so you can use this on devices. We test it on iPads as well as on Chromebooks, as well as normal laptops, PC laptops, I should say. So works on all devices, a really nice and intuitive system, and really supplementary with low workloads to your assessment process in autumn and spring if you're using those in secondary. That was a whistle-stop tour. I'm conscious of time and I wanted to leave time for questions too. Anthony, do you have any questions on any of that, having seen me rush through it?
No, I thought that was really comprehensive, Josh.
It's almost like we prepped this in advance, isn't it?
Something like that, yeah. The one thing I was going to ask, if people are interested and they want to find out more, they want to speak to someone, how can they do that?
What a great question. So you can book in a demo directly with us using our online link, and I will post that link in the chat in just a second.
Just put it in the chat
for me as we speak. Yeah, I will put it. Oh, you've just done it already, have you?
Mm-hmm.
You're way ahead of me. Thank you. I was. You could see me rushing to put things together. Yeah, there we go. So you can use that link. Click on that link, and you book in a chat with one of our team, and we can sort of give you a little bit more of a guided look at how things work on a one-to-one basis, answer any individual questions we do like talking to schools, so don't feel shy about booking that in. It's not too long a meeting, 20 minutes or thereabouts. It's a nice, efficient use of your time. Do feel free to do that at any point.
Okay, thank you very much, Josh. Of course, you can get in touch with Josh and his team at Smartgrade, but if you have any questions, feel free to also contact AC Plus. If you've got a development lead and you're in a development session and you want to ask about assessment, then absolutely do it there. We've just designed, as part of our development session structure, we have a new development session called an assessment overview development session, where we'll talk through and walk through how you're setting up your assessments in your school, think about how we're doing it effectively, and that can be using multiple choice quizzes like Josh just showed you, can be your summative assessments, but also looking at your more formative, like pre and post unit assessments as well, and how you use those. Well, that is it from our team, but if you do have any questions, we will stay on the line for a few minutes afterwards. So if you've got any questions, absolutely pop them into the chat and we can try and field those for you.
Webinar after party for those who want to stay around.
Yes.